Hey friends, I'm glad that you're about ready to graduate. I am here with a few budgeting tips to help you along your way as you graduate from high school. All right, first things first, we need to set up a budget. First, what is a budget? A budget is a way to plan and track where all of your dollars are going. You need to give a name to every dollar that comes into your possession. So that money might be income, it might be expenses, it might be saving, it might be investing, or it might be going to taxes and things like that. But the first thing you need to do before you set up a budget is to first track your expenses. Where is your money already going? Is your money going to groceries? Is your money going to rent? Is your money going to entertainment? Is your money going to restaurants with friends? Is your money going to saving for college? Is your money going to buying a new car? Is your money going to birthday gifts for your family and friends? All of those things are types of things that represent the habits and the values that you have with money. So for the first month to 3 months or so of your budgeting journey, I would definitely consider keeping a list and keeping receipts to show where that money is going, and that will allow you to have a lot better understanding of how much money to allocate to certain areas of your budget. So you need to know where your money is already going so that you can be wise with where your money is going in the long run. Some options that you have for tracking your money. There's a bunch of different phone apps these days for budgeting, and the two that I know work really great are the Every Dollar app, and there's also a website called mint.com. It works really great as well. Your Every Dollar app is free unless you link your bank accounts to it. Free is great, but you could also have a more robust experience by linking your accounts. So up to you completely. Mint.com has a similar situation. There are certain features of it that are not free, but the website account itself is free. There are other downloadable software options that you can use. I would definitely consider talking with a friend or a family or friend or family member about downloading different software options if that is something that you're interested in. You might need to do some research on those different possibilities. When I was in college, the first way that I started, because it was free and all of the fancy apps didn't exist then, was to use an Excel spreadsheet. It was easy, it was free, I already had it, I already knew how to use it. And it was just a really quick way for me to log into my computer and say, hey, I know I bought gas today. I could write that down, and then how much gas was as I was learning to set up my first budgets and things. So an Excel spreadsheet works great, or you could possibly download an app or some software to help you manage your budgeting and manage your planning and tracking as you develop your budget. So let's get ready. Let's take some notes. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call your local bank or to reach out to a family or a friend family member or a friend that you know that can help you. Before we get too far into this, I want you to have an understanding of the different types of accounts that we're going to be talking about. If you have any questions about these, calling your local bank would be an excellent idea. They could give you more information about each one of these types and ways to use them. The first one here is a savings account. So at a savings account, this is a place where you can put away money that you don't plan to use anytime soon. This is a place to start saving money, and typically at a really low interest rate. Usually you're not going to make a ton of money in a savings account, but it's at least making some money. Anytime you have money that's not being utilized regularly or on an ongoing basis, putting it into a place where it can be saved and earn interest is always better than it not earning interest. If you can allow your money to grow while you're not using it, that is an excellent way for you to build your income. The second one here is a checking account. A checking account is where you are withdrawing money from on a regular basis to pay for ongoing expenses. So you might have a debit card that you're using, or you might be old school and be writing checks. Sometimes apartment complexes, wherever it is that you choose to live, sometimes the cheapest way to pay your rent is to pay by a check. Sometimes they will do online checks. Sometimes they will do an online debit from your bank account. But most of the time, apartment complexes currently are using just old school checks. Write out a check, hand it to the people that work at the apartment complex, or mail it in, something like that. My guess is that probably within the next 5 or so years, there will be other options for better ways to do that, and that apartment complexes will probably invest in better digital methods to do that. Anyway, that might happen in your lifetime. But anyway, a checking account is a great place for money that is used for ongoing expenses. That might be things like grocery, gas, entertainment, restaurants, things like that. Whenever you're normally spending money on regularly, that's where that money is going to come out of. An investment account. An investment account is a place for long-term savings. Long-term savings would be things that, let's say you don't need to touch that money for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. That's where you're going to put that money. Usually, a investment account of some sort will have a slightly higher interest rate than a savings account, but oftentimes there are restrictions to how you can withdraw that money, or how often you can access it. I'll call your bank. Every bank has a different situation with that, and different types of investment accounts have different rules. So there's a lot to learn there. Retirement accounts. A retirement account is a place to save money for retirement. It's not accessible without penalty until age 59 and a half. Some retirement accounts have different parameters around them. Again, call your bank. But if you have the opportunity to go ahead and start investing in retirement now, as a young student, you have compound interest on your side. You have the ability to make a lot more gain in the long 20, 30, 40 years of your life or longer before you retire. So you have quite the opportunity to invest and to allow that compound interest to work on your side in your retirement accounts. I won't spend a ton of time talking about retirement accounts here in this video because most of you aren't quite ready for that yet, but I would definitely encourage you to call your local bank or talk to an adult in your life about some of those options if that's really interesting to you. Again, other questions, call your bank. Ask lots and lots of questions. It is okay to ask lots of questions. You're a student, and you're a student of your own money. If you can learn best how to invest it, and you can learn best how to manage your money, you will be better off in the long run, and then be able to coach other people as you learn. So definitely don't hesitate to call your bank, and many banks have free education information on their websites, or free information for learning about different accounts on their websites. So take advantage of those resources and read as much as you can. In order to be a leader, you have to be a reader. You can do it. All right, so let's get started. First thing we're going to do, once you determine how much money is coming in, you first need to determine what your income is. What money do you have coming in? How much money are you making every month? How much money are you saving every month? Those sorts of things. How much money is going out of your account every month on average? Things like that. First thing though, determine how much money is coming in, okay? Then, once you determine how much money is coming in, you need to determine what your net income is. That's a fancy word, and net income means your salary or your amount of income that's coming in minus your taxes and minus your insurance. Now, taxes sometimes will be taken directly out of your paycheck. Typically, they will be. Insurance might be taken directly out of your paycheck. Otherwise, you may have to enroll in a separate insurance plan. You are able to be on your parents' insurance plan until you're 26. However, that isn't always the best option for students. So you need to chat with your parents about that and figure out what that situation looks like for you. And if you have any questions, absolutely call your bank and call your various insurance companies and get some advice on how to manage that. But determining your net income is the next thing that you want to do after you figure out how much money is your salary or is your income. You need to figure out what your net income is, your salary, minus your taxes, minus your insurance. So then what you need to do is to allocate that amount of money. So your net income, you're going to allocate that into a 10-10-80 plan. This is my favorite way to start budgeting because it's quick and easy to kind of think about. So if I were to have, let's say $1,000 as my income, then the way that I would break that up, first 10% of that is going to be $100. $100 of my $1,000, let's say I'm starting with that amount, that $100 is something that I'm going to start to save to build my emergency fund, savings, investment, and retirement funds. I'm only going to take that $100 right now. As my income increases, I can increase that amount even more. And that number would also increase as a 10% value of that total. But if I started with $1,000 and I took 10% of it, that first 10% is going to become savings. That second 10% is also going to be $100, and it's going to be a gift. It's going to be given. So you can invest in your church, your neighborhood, your community, different nonprofit organizations that are around. Giving money is something that oftentimes allows us to connect with other people and build relationships within our community. And so that's something that is valuable to me. And I would encourage you to have a conversation with your family about different ways to give and different ways to invest in your community. So that first 10% is going to be to build your emergency fund and your savings and your investment and your retirement funds. As first thing you need to do is your emergency fund. But then you're going to give that next 10%. You're going to value your community, and you're going to value the people around you. And then your job is to live on the last 80% of that income. So the last $800 that you have there is what you're going to live on. And that money is going to be used to break down your essential expenses and then your variable expenses. We're going to talk about that next, because some of your expenses are going to be things that you get to choose, and some of your expenses are going to be things that you don't get to choose. Now, the follow-up here is also, if your employer offers a 401k, sign up. This is an opportunity for you to build your retirement investing as a young person. At many different jobs, a corporation or a company will offer a 401k situation. This is oftentimes where an employer is already giving money to you for retirement. Usually that money can't be touched without penalty, but sometimes can be taken out and rolled over to other types of retirement accounts. And so learn more about that. But if you hear those words, keep in mind that that's a good thing and that you have the opportunity to do that. If your employer matches your giving to that account, do it. That's free money. That's free money that you get to use and that you get to save and that gets to earn compound interest from now until you retire. That's a long time. That's a lot of compound interest. So if you begin a job and you have the opportunity to sign up for a 401k, or your employer talks about that as an option, clue in to that vocab and just make sure that you take advantage of that option, because that is critical and a beautiful way for you to earn money. Let's talk about income. So we were talking about how to figure out what your total income is, and so that you can break it down. Different types of income are going to be your salary versus hourly pay. Some of you may end up with a job that you are going to be paid salary, which means that no matter how many hours a month you work, this is how much you get paid, and this is on whatever day you get paid, or days. And so an hourly position is going to pay you based on an hourly rate. So if you work a certain number of hours, that's how much you're going to get paid. Now, with both a salary and an hourly paid job, there will be taxes taken out and possibly insurance taken out, depending on how your insurance situation works. So again, when you have that salary or hourly pay amount per month minus your taxes and minus your insurance, that's going to be your net income. Your paycheck cycle will typically be monthly or twice per month. Some jobs will pay you once per month and you need to budget for that. Other jobs will pay you twice per month, typically in like 2-week cycles. So it just depends on what your job is and where you work, what the options are going to be for you. Sometimes you get to choose with your job when you get paid, and sometimes you don't. So definitely make sure that you're asking questions about that, because it's possible that you will have a choice in that. Multiple streams of income. Sometimes people have a full-time job and a part-time job, or multiple part-time jobs that make up kind of a full-time workload. So you have different options in terms of streams of income. We sometimes hear about people having side hustles or small jobs on the side. You might be selling art on the side. You might be babysitting on the side. You might be dog walking on the side, something like that. So sometimes people have both a full-time job as well as a part-time job. If that's you, make sure that you take into account the income that you're making from that full-time job as well as your part-time jobs. Keep in mind that sometimes it can be good to make your budget based on the income that you know you're going to get for sure, and then to use that part-time income or income that might not be solid every single month as additional savings, or for unregular expenses or irregular expenses, maybe gifts for birthdays, for friends and family, or maybe that's your out to eat budget or something like that. So if it's not money that's regularly coming in, maybe consider about how regularly it's coming in, and then where would be the best choice to allocate that money in your budget. As you're becoming an adult, you're going to realize that life is really expensive. And there are some expenses that are fixed expenses, and then there are others that are what we call variable expenses. So some of your fixed expenses might be something like your rent or your home payment. Your rent payment may go up every year or every lease cycle that you have, but for a year, typically a 12-month cycle or sometimes an 18-month cycle, your rent is going to be the same amount every single month. That will also probably include utilities, but if it doesn't, then you need to also budget for additional utilities on top of that. When you talk about utilities, you can also call the utility companies, gas companies, your electric company, your internet company, things like that. Utilities, you can typically ask about what's called level pay. Sometimes you're not eligible for level pay if you haven't lived in a certain place long enough. However, other times you are. So a level pay simply means that typically, like with a gas bill, typically in the winter, your gas bill is going to be a lot higher because it's cold outside and it takes a lot more energy to heat your home. However, sometimes with your gas company, you're able to have what's called level pay year round. So you're not paying more in the winter months and less in the summer months. You'd be paying the same amount year round. That can be a really great way to help you learn how to budget and help you learn how to allocate your money in a wise way. So if that's something that you have the ability to do, I would definitely give your utility company a call and just ask about it and see what your options are. Car payments and loans, ask about paying toward principal. So there's two concepts here. One, if you have a car payment or a loan, you definitely need to make sure that you're being smart and wise about paying that off on a regular basis. So typically it's a once a month payment. You could pay multiple times per month to pay down your loan faster. However, what I would encourage you to ask your loan provider for your vehicle would be to ask about paying toward principal. When you pay a car loan, the first thing that you're paying off is all of the interest that you owe on the car. Well, if you're like me, I don't want to pay extra interest on things that I don't want to have to pay for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask about paying toward principal. And oftentimes with companies, you're going to have to send in an additional check or an additional amount of money per month. And oftentimes in the memo of the check, you're going to have to write principal only payment or something like that, probably along with an account number for your loan. And with that, what it will do is it will reduce that loan amount so that it's reducing the amount of the loan that is accruing interest. This is a way to save money in the long run on paying interest. Loan companies don't want you to know that because they want you to pay all of the interest possible. So I would definitely give your vehicle loan organization a phone call and ask about what it means to pay toward principal. Car insurance. Car insurance is something that you're going to need on a monthly basis. Depending on the company that you work with car insurance, you may be able to get a discount by paying twice a year or sometimes paying yearly. Kind of depends on the situation, depends on the company, but sometimes that's an option. So give that a call. Give your company a call and ask about some of those questions. But typically it's the same amount per month. Rental or house insurance. Typically, in order to get an apartment or to rent a house, you are required to have rental insurance. And so rental insurance most of the time can also be purchased through the same company that you have car insurance with. And sometimes you'll get a discount if you have both insurance policies through the same company. Other times I would just give some insurance companies a call, talk with a friend or a family member that has been down this road before and allow them to help kind of guide you and lead you in that. Student loan payments. As soon as you are able to begin paying your student loan payments, trust me, student loans are not fun. I completely understand that, but pay them now. Pay them off as soon as you possibly can, even if it's a little bit at a time, a little bit more. And then you can build that amount of money that you're paying toward your student loans, the more money that you make throughout the years of your employment. So definitely consider that. Medical insurance and life insurance. You might need to consider these things as well. Some of you may be able to stay on your parents' insurance until you're 26. Others of you may not have that opportunity. And so looking into medical insurance is a good thing to make sure that you are covered and to make sure that in case of an emergency, that you have the right medical care and the right medical access available to you. Most of you probably don't need life insurance, but if you are in a situation where your job is supporting the life of another person, then you might want to consider life insurance. You as a young person could have a child, or you as a young person might be taking care of an older adult in perhaps an emergency situation. And so if that's you and that's true for you, then I would definitely call your bank and have some conversations about life insurance. There are other life insurance companies that you could get a hold of. If you're in that situation looking for insurance, I would highly encourage you to talk to a friend or a family member that you trust that can help kind of lead you and guide you through that process. There are a lot of questions to ask, and I want to make sure that you're on the right track. Hey friends, let's talk about variable expenses. So some of our expenses were fixed expenses where they were the same every month. Some expenses are what we call variable expenses. They change every month or they have the ability to change. So one of the first ones that we think of is groceries. We all need groceries. We need to be able to eat. We need to be able to thrive and survive. And so groceries, you need them, but you don't always need to be fancy. So think about what groceries you're buying. Think about what recipes you're cooking with. It is always cheaper in the long run to cook and learn how to cook, even some basic dishes, than it is to eat out every day. So if you're thinking about survival and you're thinking about eating healthy, buying groceries and learning how to cook is typically also a way to save money. Gas, you need it, but where are you going? If you have the ability to carpool with somebody or you have the ability to save money determining where you go, that's also good. When I run errands, I typically try to run them on the same day, and I typically try to do the farthest errand out first, and then on my way back from that farthest errand, hit one or two others that I needed to go to. So just simply planning where you're going based on when you need to be there and what needs to be done in a week is a great way to save money on gas. Internet service. Internet service is a variable expense. I know that we feel like internet is an absolute must and an absolute have to, but you can't live without groceries, but you can live without internet. Keep in mind that internet is free at the libraries, and oftentimes in your university environment, they might be free as well. But take advantage of those opportunities if that's not something that you can afford and that's an area that you can cut some money every month. You may need to reallocate that money to your emergency savings or to another area of your budget to start with. Clothing expenses. Clothing can be extraordinarily expensive. Keep in mind that thrift stores are a great way to find some basic clothing. Maybe you just need a pair of jeans. Maybe you need something that is, a t-shirt for something or a sweater or whatever. Thrift stores are an awesome place to go, or just finding sales. But keep in mind that it's okay not to purchase new clothing for a season. So maybe you go all summer without buying something brand new and then you save that money for something in the fall and the winter. Or maybe you don't buy something, in the fall or the winter, but you wait until the summer to buy something. You just don't always need to buy new clothes every single month. That may not be a necessary expense for you. And again, if you don't have your emergency fund set up, that is a great way to save money and to allocate money toward paying off loans or building up that emergency fund for you. Entertainment, there's a bunch of things here with entertainment that are worth talking about. Streaming services are something that we oftentimes use. However, do we need all of them? Are you accessing all of them regularly? If you are, is there a way that you can share? Or is there a way that you can live without one or two of them? For me personally, I love music, so I value my music streaming services over things that are more show-based. And so that might be you or it might not be you, but that's just something to consider. Activities, personal versus family. I personally choose to spend more money on activities that also include another person. So usually I'm using that opportunity to build community with a family member or a friend. And so I will wait to do an activity until I can do it with a friend, so I can kind of justify that cost a little bit better. Now, there are sometimes I do like to do things on my own as well, and that's a totally okay thing to do. But just keeping in mind that that's a way to save money, and that's a way to consider where your money is going. Restaurants. Are you looking up at a menu or are you looking down at a menu? If you're looking up at a menu, usually it's a fast food restaurant of some sort, and you may or may not need to tip depending on the situation. Please be respectful of all of the employees that are working at restaurants. And then if you're looking down at a menu, usually that's a more fancy restaurant. Usually that's a more sit-down type of restaurant. and definitely consider your average 15 to 20% tip for those outings. That's an important thing to consider. Vacations. I love going on vacation, but you know what? It's not a necessity. A vacation is not something that you have to do, especially when you can't afford other things in life. So staycations are great, taking an opportunity to get outside, sit in a hammock, do something locally. Sometimes it's kind of fun to be a tourist in your own city. I've gotten to experience all kinds of things here in Kansas City that I might not have gotten to experience because of some opportunities to stay home. Personal care, hair care and nails and body, things like that. Hair care can be extraordinarily expensive. Great Clips is great. There are other places to get your haircut or self-taken care of, but keep in mind that those things can be cheap or they can be extraordinarily expensive. And so, again, these are unnecessary or variable expenses that you can kind of weigh the balance, but that might be something to consider. Lastly was giving and donations. I personally recommend giving 10% of your income to the local community around you. However, that can definitely go up or it could go down based on your personal financial situation. So again, that can be a variable expense kind of depending on where you're at and what your situation is. Savings. Start saving now. You have the opportunity to save now. The most important thing for you to do as a young person right now is to save money now. And the reason why is because you have compound interest on your side. You have the opportunity to invest and you have the opportunity to increase your financial outlay as an adult. So number one, you need to save $1,000 for an emergency fund. You need to be able to have a backup situation in case your car dies, your tire blows out, your battery dies in your vehicle, or you get sick and you can't work for a week or something like that. You very well could have a crazy emergency that happens that's unexpected. Emergencies are unexpected. So oftentimes this is that kind of that first line of defense so that you are not in a dire situation immediately. Usually an emergency fund will give you a little bit of an opportunity to kind of make a plan, which is a good safety net for you. The next thing is to save a full emergency fund. So your first job is to save a little bit of an emergency fund. Just get your $1,000 as fast as you can. You might need to sell some stuff. You might need to take on some extra jobs, things like that, but get that $1,000 emergency fund just in case. Save a full emergency fund at 6 to 12 months of income. So once you have a full 6 to 12 months of income, then you can start investing and doing other things with it. But until the point that you have a full emergency fund where, let's say you lost your job and you couldn't work for 6 to 12 months, that's a long time, but you might not find a job immediately. And so this is an opportunity for you to continue to live, to pay your rent, to pay for groceries, to pay for various other things that you are required to pay for without being very stressed out. Although it's important to find a job quickly. But that would be the next thing. Next, after that, would be to start saving for retirement ASAP. So you are young, which means that compound interest is on your side. So after you have your $1,000, after you have your full emergency fund, then you can start opening up a different IRAs, or other retirement account options. When you've completed those steps, continue to save and look into investing options. This is the opportunity for you to start calling banks and talking with trusted friends and family about some different options in that realm. Interest is your friend in this case. So when you're saving, interest is your friend. When you're paying down loans, you want the lowest amount of interest possible and you don't want to pay that interest. But when you're the one benefiting from the extra money, then it's a great thing to do. So some savings accounts have limits on how many times you can deduct or transfer money. So definitely look into some different types of savings accounts at your bank and ask them questions about that. It's also okay to have money at different banks. So sometimes it's good to have money at one bank and then money at another. But again, talk with a trusted friend or family member to learn some more on that and kind of what your options are. Again, if you have questions, absolutely call your bank. They would be happy to help you figure that out. Taxes. Taxes are important. Take-home pay equals net pay. So your take-home pay is what you get to take home and to use to be able to build out your 10-10-80 budget. Your net pay is your salary minus your taxes minus your insurance. We talked about that earlier, but just a quick review. Taxes that will be withheld from your salary are state, federal, Social Security, and Medicare. So those pieces of money will automatically come out of your paychecks, whether or not you're paid salary or hourly. Depending on your situation, those amounts will differ, but you will always have state tax taken out. You'll always have federal, Social Security, and Medicare. Now, some states do that differently, so depending on what state you live in, that amount might be different and the process that they use might be different. Insurance premiums. If your medical insurance is through your employer, then that insurance premium will be taken out of your salary. If not, you might need to pay for additional medical insurance on your own through a different company, or just on your own and not through your employer. Next here, it says be prepared to pay additional taxes each year after you file due April 15th. So April 15th is what we know as tax day as adults. Your taxes are due April 15th every single year. Sometimes that date gets changed depending on situations, but April 15th, that's a good day for you to know as an adult. You may need to pay additional taxes after you file your taxes. Sometimes what is taken out of your salary, taken out of your paycheck every month, sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes it is enough and you get a refund, but sometimes it's not. You need to know what your W-2 form is, and you need to know how to find your 1040 form. That is typically how you're going to fill out your taxes. Again, I would talk with a trusted adult in your life to ask more questions about what those forms look like and how you get them, because that is definitely something that you will experience very soon. Hey friends, another area that people continue to ask about are credit cards. Here are some credit card basics. There's all kinds of things that you can learn about credit cards, but this is kind of the base layer of information. Number one, you don't need one. Credit cards can be a good thing, but not so that you can rack up a balance. Keep in mind that a debit card can be used for anything that a credit card can be used for, and it's backed with the same security features. So again, call your bank, ask some questions about that. Credit cards are not something that you need. If you have a tendency to be a spender in life, this might be something for you to consider. They can be good for international travel and have perks and benefits, but be extremely careful about weighing the options. Sometimes airline miles are not always worth it, but the airline companies always want you to think that they are. So just keep that in mind. Do some math about those things. There are some different websites that you can look at that will talk about credit card options. I would talk with some friends and family members that are wise with their finances about how to best use credit cards. Keep in mind that a pre-approved credit does not mean that you should have it. When you hit a certain age, you will start getting credit card mail information like every day, every week in the mail. They want you to spend additional money and they want you to rack up a balance so that you are paying them interest. That is their goal. Just because you're pre-approved for a credit card does not mean that you should have it. Rip it up, trash it, throw it away. Make sure that you are making the best decision for you and for your finances before you end up with credit, crazy situations where you owe lots of money. Interest rates are outrageous. The interest is the percent that you pay on top of your principal or the original amount. So in the case of a credit card, interest is not a good thing. It means that you are not paying off the full balance every single month, and it means that you are paying more additionally than what you would owe normally. So let's say you went to the grocery store and you put $50 on a credit card. At the end of the month, you could pay off that $50 and it wouldn't make any difference. But let's say you couldn't afford your $50 there and you started to rack up a balance and you paid the minimum payment. Then all of a sudden you are racking up interest on top of that. Some credit cards are up to 36% or more interest. At the time I created this presentation, that was the highest interest rate that was in the recent past. But I definitely know that in some cases it can be different. if you do have a credit card, pay the full balance. Debt is not your friend. A phrase that I learned when I was young was debt, D-E-B-T. Don't even buy that. If you are going to go into debt to do something, don't do it. Don't do it. Things like college loans, things like a car loan, things like a home loan are typically considered okay, but those are also things that you could consider to save additional money for and then pay for in cash. So even like a car loan, you could wait to buy a brand new car, and you could continue to save money for multiple years, and you could pay for a car in cash. I know people that have paid for homes in cash because they've lived in an apartment for a really long time and said, hey, we're not going to get a home loan. We're just going to stay in an apartment for a longer period of time and then save the money to buy a house. I know people that have been in that situation. If you are going to go into debt to go on a vacation, that's silly. You should not be going on a vacation if you're going to go into debt to do that. Debt, don't even buy that. If you can't afford whatever it is and you are going to have to not be able to pay it back, and you that's not in your budget, then that's something that you should not be purchasing. So make sure that you are wise about how you do that and make sure that you are making good choices with your credit. This is an important slide to me because oftentimes we don't really consider what we need versus what we want, or we say that we do, but we don't actually really think about it. So again, keep in mind, you need to build a budget for things like birthday, wedding gifts, holidays, and extras. Those are things that sometimes creep up on you in the sense that you didn't plan for them. My brother's birthday is in September, and I typically like to give him a gift. Well, September just kind of rolls around, and all of a sudden I think, oh man, I need to do that. So if I'm planning for it and that's in the budget, then it's easier to plan for it. Same with weddings, family weddings, or other holidays or situations or extras. Coupons, save them, organize them, Google them. If you have the ability to even save 20% on an item, 20% is only 1/5 of the total cost, so it's not a lot, but sometimes that's better than nothing. So definitely consider coupons are important. New versus thrift store treasures. Sometimes you can buy things that are brand new because it makes sense to do that. Other times, maybe whatever item it is, you could do with something that's secondhand. There's all kinds of secondhand stores. One of my favorites is for athletic gear. There are some different stores that you can go to. One of them is called Play It Again Sports. There's several others here in our area, but we'll have used sports gear. So maybe you need a brand new baseball glove, but maybe you don't want to pay $300 for it. Maybe you can get it for $50, something like that. It might not be brand spanking new, but it'll still work. And so just things like that, clothing and other items you might not need to buy brand new. Do you need it? One of the tactics that I use for myself even is I wait a week or a month and I consider it and I research it and then I buy it. If there's something that I see and I'm like, oh man, that's a really good deal, or maybe, oh man, I really like that thing, whatever it is, or maybe I've been looking for something similar but I couldn't decide what I wanted. Wait a week, wait a month, wait a couple of months. If it's still there, if it's still on sale and you still feel like you need it, then you can buy it. But making decisions on a whim is usually a situation that you end up spending more money than you intended to spend. Sometimes it makes sense to stock up. Recently, the grocery store had green beans, canned green beans on sale for like 33 cents a piece. I stocked up. I bought a whole bunch of green beans. But other times things might not be on sale and it doesn't make sense to buy more than you really need for just that week. So keep in mind, you know, what it is that you use frequently and what you maybe just use on occasion. Sometimes it's good to replace something, or it's sometimes good to fix it. A good example would be a vehicle. I used to drive a 99 Camry. It had thousands and thousands and thousands of miles on it. And for a long time, I continued to fix it rather than purchasing a brand new car because it was more affordable in that sense. Now, at a certain point, I began to realize that it was costing more to fix it than it was really worth as a whole. And that's when I needed to replace the vehicle, and that's what I did. But up until a certain point, it can continue to make sense to fix something rather than to replace it. Same with clothing, or same with other potentially appliances or things like that at home. Will generic do the trick? Sometimes generic store brands for things are totally fine. Sometimes maybe they are a slightly lesser quality. Sometimes the lesser quality matters, and sometimes maybe it doesn't. A good example are paper plates. I love the really good paper plates for maybe an outdoor picnic, but maybe if I'm just doing something casually at home, it doesn't make sense to pay triple the price for um, more fancy paper plates and things like that. There are plenty of other things that generic could totally do the trick for as well. So keep that in mind. Use every last drop. If you are somebody that is using shampoo, toothpaste, detergent, whatever it is, mix up a tiny bit of water at the bottom, shake it out, use it. Make sure that you're using every last drop of something. That's always a great way to save money. Well, with all of that, I hope that this has given you some encouragement to make a budget and kind of some tools to go about working to do that. I wish you the best, and I hope that you can take a look at what your income is and then break down what your necessary categories are for things that you are spending regularly and to place an amount of money in those categories. Hey friends, so let's get to the practicality of starting a budget. So now that you know what various kinds of money are and what kind of accounts you have available to you, this is a good way to start setting up a budget. So first thing is to track your income. So your income is that first column. What money is coming in that you have? That's going to be at the very beginning. So sometimes as you're beginning to budget, this is going to look different every single month before you kind of get a good understanding of what you are making and what money is going out. So that's that expected, actual, and difference. So sometimes it's a good idea to say, hey, this is what money I expect to come in this month. And at the end of the month, you can say, okay, this is how much money I actually had. And then what was the difference? Did you make more? Did you make less? What was that difference amount? And then below that, this is where it says paycheck expenses. And so these are expenses that are coming out of your paycheck. So these are things like groceries. These are things like insurance. These are things like hair care. These are things like you went to the Royals game, or you went to your favorite restaurant, or you paid your car insurance, things like that. These are all of your expenses. You need to list out all of your expenses. What I would do is take a look at our list that we had earlier of your variable expenses as well as your fixed expenses. Your fixed expenses are what you need to list first, because those things aren't going to change, and those are going to be the things that you're responsible for no matter what, 100%. Then you can look at what money is left over and what money you have available to spend on your variable expenses. So paycheck first. Look at total expenses that need to be taken out. First, look at your fixed expenses, and then look at your variable expenses. And then at the end of each month, you need to determine, did you spend that amount in that category? Was it more or less than you expected? And then what was that difference? As you're beginning to do this, it's going to take probably 6 months or so for you to have a good understanding of how much money on average you spend in certain categories. As you do that, you can become a whole lot smarter about how you do this. Yes, there are apps that you can use for this to get you on the right track, or this spreadsheet looks pretty similar to kind of an Excel spreadsheet, and you might have that available to you for free, and you may not need to spend any money on that process. I would definitely make sure that you are talking with a trusted friend or family member about the fact that you're setting up a budget. Ask for help. This would be something that is great to create dialogue about at home or with your siblings. You might need some help, and you might have some questions about things as you continue to become a wise adult with your finances, and I wish you the best. My hope is that this gives you a foundation for how to begin budgeting and to consider how to use your finances wisely. I wish you the best, and congrats on graduation, and I am excited to see what you do.